Hello, everybody, and good morning. Welcome back. My name is Michael, and we are getting back into the reading of the Word of God. I do want to apologize. It started off Passion Week, and then wasn't able to finish it. And the only reason why that is because I had my boys up here, and during that time, excuse me, I was doing a lot of studying with them. And upon questions that I would just ask, I learned that their understanding of more broadened a little bit type of things. They're about 11 and 12. Are a little bit underdeveloped. And that's my fault. Trying in the last year, obviously, to get as much information to them as possible. They're aware, or they know the main construct, but there's just so many other things with it that they just don't comprehend because, one, they haven't read it themselves. Keep telling them when they're away from here to get into the Word. I don't think they ever listen. They're children. That's what they do. But yeah, so that's the reason why I didn't get the remaining amount of the Passion Week study done on here, at least. We definitely were in celebration for it, had our own little communion, went over his crucifixion on Friday, his resurrection on Sunday, just everything in between, spending time with them, getting out of the house and going to the park. It just, time came and it went. And so I apologize, but you can continue that lesson. I do have other lessons or readings from beforehand, from almost about a year ago now, where you'd be able to finish that study. You could always finish the remaining chapters yourself, because it's great information. At some point, we'll always end up back there throughout time. But yeah, so we're going to continue our study in the book of Judges. When we left off before Passion Week, we had just finished chapter 6. The last thing we were going over is the sign of the fleece, when Gideon had said to God, "If you'll save Israel by my hand, as you said." He's basically asking him to, he's putting a fleece down. And he said, "Make the fleece completely soaked and everything around it dry." And God did so. And then the next day he asked again, but vice versa. And God again did this. So it's like, absolutely, this is God telling me this. So that's where we're at now. In chapter 7, it's Gideon's 300 men. Let's see here. Yes. So we should be able to get with 7, 8, and 9 this morning, is my hope. So that way we can continue getting on the study, continue working our way through the Old Testament, all through God's time, of course. But yeah, stop yammering, as I tend to do, and we'll go ahead and get started. One second. All right, so we got chapter 7 of the book of Judges. Here we go. Then Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and all the people who were with him rose early and encamped beside the spring of Harod. And the camp of Midian was north of them, by the hill of Moreh in the valley. The Lord said to Gideon, "The people with you are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hand, lest Israel boast over me, saying, My own hand has saved me. Now therefore proclaim in the ears of the people, saying, Whoever is fearful and trembling, let them return home and hurry away from Mount Gilead." Then 22,000 of the people returned, and 10,000 remained. And the Lord said to Gideon, "The people are still too many. Take them down to the water, and I will test them for you there. And any one of whom I say to you, this one shall go with you, shall go with you. And any one of whom I say to you, this one shall not go with you, shall not go." So he brought the people down to the water. And the Lord said to Gideon, "Everyone who laps the water with his tongue, as a dog laps, he shall set by himself. Likewise, everyone who kneels down to drink, and the number of those who lapped, putting their hands to their mouths, was 300 men. But all the rest of the people knelt down to drink water, and the Lord said to Gideon, with the 300 men who lapped I will save you, and give the Midianites into your hand, and let all the others go, every man to his home. So the people took provisions in their hands and their trumpets, and he sent all the rest of Israel, every man to his tent, but retained the 300 men. And the camp of Midian was below him in the valley. That same night the Lord said to him, Arise, go down against the camp, for I have given it into your hand. But if you are afraid to go down to the camp with Purah your servant, and you shall hear what they say, and afterwards your hands shall be strengthened to go down against the camp. Then he went down with Purah his servant to the outpost with the armed men who were in the camp. And the Midianites and the Amalekites and all the people of the east lay along the valley like locusts in abundance, and their camels were without number, as the sand that is on the seashore in abundance. When Gideon came, behold, a man was telling a dream to his comrade, and he said, Behold, I dreamed a dream, and behold, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the camp of Midian, and came to the tent and stuck it so that it fell, and turned it upside down, so that the tent lay flat. And his comrade answered, This is no other than the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel. God has given into his hand Midian and all the camp. As soon as Gideon heard the telling of the dream and its interpretation, he worshipped, and he returned to the camp of Israel and said, Arise, for the Lord has given the host of Midian into your hand. And he divided the 300 men into 3 companies, put trumpets into the hands of all of them, and empty jars, with torches inside the jars. And he said to them, Look at me, and do likewise. When I come to the outskirts of the camp, do as I do. When I blow the trumpet, I and all who are with me, then blow the trumpets also on every side of all the camp, and shout for the Lord and for Gideon. So Gideon and the 100 men who were with him came to the outskirts of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch. When they had just set the watch, they blew the trumpets and smashed the jars that were in their hands. Then the 3 companies blew the trumpets and broke the jars. They held in their left hands the torches, and in their right hands the trumpets to blow, and they cried, A sword for the Lord and for Gideon. Every man stood in his place around the camp, and all the army ran. They cried out and fled. When they blew the 300 trumpets, the Lord set every man's sword against his comrade and against all the army. And the army fled as far as Beth Shittah, toward Zerara, as far as the border of Abal Meholah by Tabbath. And the men of Israel were called out from Naphtali, and from Asher, and from all Manasseh, and they pursued after Midian. Gideon sent messengers throughout all the hill country of Ephraim, saying, Come down against the Midianites, and capture the water against them, as far as Beth Barah, and also the Jordan. So all the men of Ephraim were called out, and they captured the waters as far as Beth Barah, and also the Jordan. And they captured the 2 princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeb. They killed Oreb at the rock of Oreb, and Zeb they killed at the winepress of Zeb. Then they pursued Midian, and they brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon across the Jordan. Chapter 8. Gideon defeats Zappah and Zalmunna. Then the men of Ephraim said to him, What is it that you have done to us, not to call us when you went to fight against Midian? And they accused him fiercely, and he said to them, What have I done now in comparison with you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the grape harvest of Abiezer? God has given into your hand the princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeb. What have I been able to do in comparison with you? Then their anger against him subsided when he said this. And Gideon came to the Jordan and crossed over, he and the 300 men who were with him, exhausted yet pursuing. So he said to the men of Succoth, Please give loaves of bread to the people who follow me, for they are exhausted, and I am pursuing after Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian. And the officials of Succoth said, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna already in your hand, that we should give bread to your army? So Gideon said, Well then, when the Lord has given Zebah and Zalmunna into my hand, I will flail your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and with briars. And from there he went up to Peniel, and spoke to them in the same way. And the men of Peniel answered him as the men of Succoth had answered. And he said to the men of Peniel, when I come back in peace, I will break down this tower. Now Ziba and Zalmunna were in the Karkor with their army, about 15,000 men, all who were left all the army of the people of the east, for there had fallen 120,000 men who drew the sword. And Gideon went up by the way of the tent dwellers east of Nobah and Jegbeha, and attacked the army, for the army felt secure. And Zebah and Zalmunna fled, and he pursued them and captured the 2 kings of Midian, Zebah and Zalmunna, and he threw all the army into a panic. Then Gideon the son of Joash returned from the battle by the Axen of Heres. And he captured the young men of Succoth. I gotta figure out how to pronounce that word. 13. Of course, it doesn't give it to me. I feel like I'm pronouncing that word wrong. Maybe Harris. The accent of Harris. I don't know. Anyways, 14 continuing. And he captured a young man of Succoth and questioned him. And he wrote down for him the officials and elders of Succoth, 77 men. And he came to the men of Succoth and said, Behold, Zebah and Zalmunna, about whom you taunted me, saying, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna already in your hand, that we should give bread to your men who are exhausted? And he took the elders of the city, and he took thorns of the wilderness and briars, and with them taught the men of Succoth a lesson. And he broke down the tower of Peniel, and killed the men of the city. Then he said to Zebah and Zalmunna, We are the men whom you killed at Tabor. They answered, As you are, so were they. Every one of them resembled the son of a king. And he said, They were my brothers, the sons of my mother. As the Lord lives, if you had saved them alive, I would not kill you. So he said to Jether, his firstborn, Rise and kill them. But the young man did not draw his sword, for he was afraid, because he was still a young man. Then Zebah and Zalmunna said, Rise yourself and fall upon us, for as the man is, so is his strength. And Gideon arose and killed Zebah and Zalmunna, and he took the crescent ornaments that were on the necks of their camels. Continuing verse 22, Gideon's ephod. Excuse me. 1 second. All right. Gideon's ephod. Then the men of Israel said to Gideon, Rule over us, you and your son and your grandson also, for you have saved us from the hand of Midian. Gideon said to them, I will not rule over you, and my son will not rule over you. The Lord will rule over you. And Gideon said to them, Let me make a request of you. Every one of you give me the earrings from his spoil. For they had golden earrings, because they were Ishmaelites. And they answered, We will willingly give them. And they spread a cloak, and every man threw in the earrings of his spoil. And the weight of the golden earrings that he requested was 1,700 shekels of gold, besides the crescent ornaments and the pendants and the purple garments worn by the kings of Midian, and besides the collars that were around the necks of their camels. And Gideon made an ephod of it, and put it in his city in Ophrah. And all Israel whored after it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and to his family. So Midian was subdued before the people of Israel, and they raised their heads no more. And the land had rest 40 years in the days of Gideon. 29, the death of Gideon. I want to verify what exactly we just read from 27. Yeah, see. The form of the ephod is not known, but clearly it became an object of idolatrous worship. I don't know. All I know is that they should have been doing that. Verse 29, continuing the death of Gideon. Jerubbaal, the son of Joash, went and lived in his own house. Now Gideon had 70 sons, his own offspring, for he had many wives. And his concubine who was in Shechem also bore him a son, and he called his name Abimelech. And Gideon the son of Joash died in a good old age, and was buried in the tomb of Joash his father, at Ophrah of the Abiezrites. As soon as Gideon died, the people of Israel turned again and whored after the Baals, and made Baal Berith their god. And the people of Israel did not remember the Lord their God, who had delivered them from the hand of all their enemies on every side. And they did not show steadfast love to the family of Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, in return for all the good that he had done to Israel. So we go ahead and continue with chapter 9. What time is it? 4:56. You know what? I unfortunately do not have time to finish this. That's unfortunate. You have a couple of minutes though, so we'll go over some keynotes just from the last two chapters that we read this morning. So coming back to verse 3 of chapter 7, the well-known Mount Gilead is east of the Jordan. This may be another one otherwise unmentioned, or perhaps from should be translated toward. From chapter 7, verse 5, as a dog lappeth. Oh man, I really need to get a New King James version of this model, just so that, because everything's already translated over, so it's like, so as a dog, when they were drinking the water, when he was trying to decide between who was going to fight with the army, and God said, take him to the water, as the dog lappeth. Evidently the 300 used their hands to bring the water to their mouths while standing upright, just as a dog uses his tongue to bring the water to his mouth. This proved to them to be watchful and alert, in contrast to those who knelt. From chapter 7, verses 13 through 15, barley bread, rather than wheat bread, aptly represented the poor farmers of Israel, the tents, the nomadic Midianites. The interpretation by the Midianite gave Gideon final assurance. The trumpets were from ram's horn, earthenware vessels in which the provisions mentioned in verse 8 were possibly carried. So from 19, the beginning of the middle watch, which is about 10 p.m., the smashing of the pitchers not only made noise, but allowed the lights to be seen suddenly. And then continuing in our keynotes, starting with chapter 8, verse 1 through 3, the Ephraimites complained that they had not been in an initial rout of the Midianites. Gideon's soft answer reminded them that they had captured 2 Midianite chiefs, which had calmed them down. And this is in their anger. Succoth was east of the Jordan and north of the Jabbok River. The residents did not wish to take a chance helping Gideon until they were certain that he had captured the Midianite chiefs. I'm assuming that the people were like, well, hey, we're not guaranteeing here that you're going to be going and getting them, so we're going to sit here idly until we decide and see who wins. Is basically what they were saying, and it came back to bite them. Peniel was 4 miles east of Succoth. These people also tried to remain neutral. From verse 11, the Midianite army thought they were safe from an attack from Gideon. From 14, he wrote the names of the city officials, which he described. Verse 16, Gideon had the leaders of Succoth dragged over thorns, which probably resulted in their deaths. That would hurt. That would not be an enjoyable experience. Because I'm sure the thorns weren't like little itty bitty thorns, probably like really big thorns. From 820, for Jether to have performed the execution would have been an honor for the boy and greater humiliation for those to be slain. From verse 21, of the ornaments were worn as amulets, so like necklaces with what they had on the camels. From verse 23, Gideon declined rule and dynasty, affirming rather the kingship of Yahweh. From verse 24, Ishmaelites, a turn of nomadic traders, which the Midianites were. So from verse 26, the bag of gold from all the earrings, that was probably about 42.5 pounds of gold. The form of the ephod is not known, but clearly it became an object of idolatrous worship. From verse 30, chapter 8, many wives, proof of Gideon's prosperity. From 31, his concubine, as was customary, lived with her family in Shechem. And then finally, verse 33, concerning Baal worship. We can go to chapter 2, verse 13 notes. Let's go ahead and do that just real quick. Baal, the rain and fertility god of the Canaanites, the plural, Baalim, may include all the false deities of the land, for there were many local Baals, Ashtaroth, plural for Ashtoreth, the female consorts of Baal. Yeah, you hear that one throughout a lot of the Bible, actually. So yeah, that'll be the conclusion of our reading this morning. I do hope you enjoyed it. It's been great getting back on here and getting a recording done. It's been definitely a few days. The last 2 days I have overslept for work, which is why it's now Wednesday. I was working on 3 hours of sleep on Monday and then like about the same yesterday. I just didn't wake up in time to get this all taken care of. But it's taken care of today. So again, do thank you very much. Continue to read in the Word of the Lord, understanding that the entire Bible just screams of Jesus Christ. Always be in thought process. If you haven't been saved, I would seriously consider it. All the evidence is there. It's overwhelming, the evidence that is proven just on Jesus Christ himself alone. That's not even adding in everything else that goes along with it, so if you want to deny it, that's your own thing. You're more than welcome to suppress the truth, because God gave you that ability to do so upon your own choosing. He doesn't want you to. He wants you with him. He wants all of us with him, but unfortunately we are stubborn people, just as the Israelites are. So, the truth is in your heart, and whether you suppress it or choose to accept it is your choice. If you don't want to be with God, he's not going to force you to. But I'm telling you, the alternative is horrible. You can't, you think you're absent from God now. Like, you're not. You have God all around you in all of this. To be truly separated from God and his presence and anything that is his is nothing that I ever want to experience. So, yeah, anyways, do love you very much. I hope you all have a wonderful week. God bless you. I will see you tomorrow with the continued reading of the book of Judges. Working on getting that taken care of. You have a blessed day, and I'll see you tomorrow.